Jennifer Scribner is a nutritional therapy practitioner, certified GAPS practitioner, and restorative wellness practitioner. She's the author of the book From Mac and Cheese to Veggies, Please: How to Get Your Kid to Eat New Foods, End Picky Eating Forever, and Stay Sane in the Process, which is based on her work with hundreds of clients, and it details how any parent can dramatically change the diet of their pickiest kids. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. How did you get started in this area of helping kids and parents who are picky eaters?
Well, I became a GAPS diet practitioner, and the GAPS diet, for those who don't know, is gut and psychology syndrome. So it's all about the gut-brain connection. And I ended up attracting clients with kids that were on the autism spectrum or with sensory processing disorders, or kids with Crohn's disease, kids that had really serious issues with their health. And with the GAPS diet, we're eating bone broth, we're eating fermented foods, we're including organ meats. So, it's a whole foods traditional diet with some tweaks to it. And parents were like, I really want to do this. I believe this is going to be healing to my kid, but I don't think they will ever eat those foods. So I had to figure out, how can we get these things in? What strategies can we use to actually get these kids eating the foods that are going to be so nourishing to them? And it was really a lot of trial and error and success with a lot of the early parents, because I myself actually don't have kids either. And it was just learning through them, from them, and with them, and then doing some research and kind of combining those things together.
So you had to get a little stealthy with sneaking some of these foods that like the kids needed to heal and overcome some of these digestive challenges into their diet without, was it without them knowing, or is your approach transparency based?
It depends on the kids and the parents and what they're willing to do. So for some parents, it's like, okay, this is it. We're changing the diet. That's, you're eating this. And it is very transparent. And it's just kind of that we're going to wait around for them to do it. They're not going to starve themselves to death. But for other kids, I had one kid with Crohn's disease who he's like, I hate the GAPS diet. I don't want to eat any of these foods. And then we started putting everything in the smoothies, and he told everybody, I'm not on the GAPS diet anymore. But he was 100% on the GAPS diet. He just didn't realize that all this stuff was being introduced into other foods that his mom was making that he did like.
Nice. So when I was dealing with a lot of digestive issues, I started with the GAPS diet and some variations thereof a few years ago. For listeners who may be struggling with suboptimal digestion, Crohn's, colitis, IBS, can you give us a little bit of an overview of the GAPS, gut and psychology syndrome diet, and sort of how you practically apply it?
Yeah, so it's related to a lot of other diets. It was based on specific carbohydrate diet. And then there was kind of some additional, which that was developed in the 50s, I believe. And there was some additional research that went in by Dr. Natasha and Campbell McBride, who wrote the GAPS book, to kind of update it with some other modern science that had come about. So it's similar to paleo. It can be keto at times. So it's a lot of those type of things. It's grain-free. There's a real focus on fats in particular and getting fat soluble nutrients. It's really nutrient dense. It includes meat, but there's a foundation of meat stocks, fermented foods at every meal, and that focus on nutrient density. But the other aspects that makes it different than some other eating plans is that it's not just the food. We also look at detoxifying the household products and bringing down that burden that we're faced with every day. And then also detoxifying the body, both through nutrition and then at some point through, baths, through juicing, through some other added modalities. But that aspect is a little unique to other digestive focused plans.
All right, cool. With the detoxification, that is an element. Did you add that later because you found it was necessary in clients? Were they not progressing when you only focused on nutrition?
I'm not sure how it came about with Dr. Natasha, other than looking at when, kids with autism that we're doing chelation therapy, we're doing a lot of that. And so it was, how can we do that naturally and upregulate the body? Because we're always detoxifying. We have these organs that are doing that for us, but so many of us, if those are nutrient run processes. So if we aren't including the nutrients that do that, we're going to have a slowed down detoxification system. So we look at it as foundationally restoring that ability to the body, but then also reducing everything in the environment. And I found that to be really crucial, especially with kids and adults that are highly sensitive with mood, with behavior, and then of course with things like eczema, rashes, asthma. Those, we often only think about your laundry detergent when it's causing you a rash or something, but it can be much more than that. So if we can address all those things in the home, there's, less phthalates we're breathing in, that type of stuff. There's less for the body to process, so it can actually get caught up on this backlog that may be stored within the body.
And with so many toxins in our environment, we've got the environmental toxins, we've got infections and some of those toxins that come from within. We've got the electromagnetic environment that produces toxins biologically. What have you found to be, you can drive yourself nuts trying to do everything. Mm-hmm. And hundreds of thousands of toxins we're talking about. So through your experimentation, trial and error, and piggybacking off of the experience of Dr. Natasha McBride as well, what have you found to be like the low-hanging fruit that makes the biggest difference for the largest cross-section of people?
That's why I feel like the diet is foundational, because, getting the sugar out of the diet in particular, cutting off the sources of food for the microbes so that we're not adding to those toxins within our body, that is very foundational to me. But I'm also, I think good quality, pure water is really important. Sleep
what's your go-to source of water?
It depends on where people live and what they're, what's available to them. Fortunately, here in Portland, we don't have fluoride in the water, so we don't have that issue. You can do filtration, but that's not common everywhere. So often if people are highly sensitive, especially, I want people drinking a spring water, a completely, unprocessed water. And that might mean going to collect it if that's available, or it might mean getting a service. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff I do for fun when I travel,
Yeah.
So yeah, getting really pure water and getting people well hydrated as well, because if they're not getting enough hydration, they're not getting the fluids to process through the body, they don't have enough, interstitial, intercellular fluids, that type of thing. Like that in itself can help everything process out. And then focusing on sleep, getting people to sleep at an earlier hour, getting a regular bedtime, getting enough time in bed, turning off the lights, getting a ritual around winding down is so important. And I've had clients where, months I'll be like, we got to change your sleep. And then finally I'm like, just 15 minutes earlier, you're going to go to bed. Just move your get ready for bed routine 15 minutes earlier, not your bedtime, but you're getting ready for bed, because that's where it all starts. Mm-hmm. And even just that can make such a difference in how people feel with their mood and their energy, on the subsequent days. So those micro changes that don't seem like it's going to be huge can really add up.
Okay, awesome. And then there's a connection here that's been discussed and observed by many functional medicine practitioners and experts in the space with exposure to heavy metals and some of the autism related disorders that are experienced. How much of this have you seen it being a case of genetics load the gun, environment pulls the trigger, maybe there's exposure via the V word, or even there's a number of heavy metals in our environment. How much is there a relationship there that you've observed, and how much is chelation? Have you seen it be beneficial with kids?
Yeah, so I believe that is how autism develops, that there is something triggering. It can be various things, but it's not just one thing. As Dr. Natasha talks about, it can start with, there can be vaccines in a poor immune system to begin with. We don't have the right gut flora. Then we feed kids, Cheerios and rice as some of their first foods. And so they're getting these GMO grains that they can't digest. And so it just kind of sets the stage for everything to go wrong. So I don't believe it's like just one factor. It's, a syndrome of different things.
Yeah.
But the toxicity, to me, that's where kind of like the money is in the GAPS diet. Like that's the long-term benefit, because you can correct diet, but the longer you go with that nourishment, the longer you go with reduced toxicity and working through that backlog, that's where you feel better and better. That's been my experience, and that's what I see in my clients as well. And I don't advocate like IV chelation or anything like that with my clients specifically. We really work on bringing the nutrients in. And that's part of why the fats are so important, because the minerals are not absorbed unless they're present with fat at that same meal. So we want to get lots and lots of minerals in, because part of how we can absorb these heavy metals is they can take the place of a useful mineral in the body if we're deficient in that. So for instance, if we don't have enough calcium in the bones, they'll take in lead because it can be stored there, and it's similar size shape, but of course not the right structure. So as we bring calcium back into the body, as we get ourselves nourished, we get ourselves digesting, absorbing those minerals, then we can release that naturally from the body. And it doesn't have to be something terribly uncomfortable, but we look at doing that for a couple of years, just with some basic diet, with some baths, with some bath additives, with doing juicing to concentrate the nutrients in some ways, of like absorb more of that. A lot of cooked vegetables, because you can eat a lot of a lot more minerals in cooked vegetables as they cook down and the water cooks out. And then adding something maybe like a humic fulvic acid, like those are more of the approaches that we look at with GAPS. There can be sometimes homeopathic detox. It really depends on the individual and how they can tolerate different things. Because people who are highly sensitive, we often have to go really, really slow.
All right, nice. I like that you brought that up, because I was going to ask, there are some cases of extreme compromised digestion, and where almost any solid food is a problem. What do you do in those instances? And if you feel like touching on it too, you mentioned fermented foods a lot. It seems like there's also a good amount of people that struggle with fermented foods, having a histamine reaction that may be related to parasites. But I guess in this question is around troubleshooting and these extreme cases. What do you do in the most extreme of cases?
So if it's extreme digestion, like a Crohn's disease, like we have a chronic diarrhea, we really can't tolerate many foods at all. I do a no plant diet at first, where we're really just having meat stocked, well-cooked meat stuff. And then it's just adding fats. There's, very little digestion needed for those things. It's like, that's why we do the long, slow cooked meats, so that it's easier for us to assimilate. And then adding a little bit of probiotic food to that. And that can be something like whey, like that you've dripped from your yogurt. That can be very well tolerated. And then the lactic acid can help firm up the stools. So that's what I've seen be most useful for a period of time. And often it's a week or two of no plant. And everybody feels like, oh my gosh, if I don't eat plants, I'm going to die tomorrow. Like, I'm going to be so unhealthy. But you're listening to your body, doing what works for it. That if you have extremely irritated digestion, even a cooked plant matter can be like sandpaper scratching down it. So we just need to cut out all the fiber, let that heal. Your small intestine turns over cells very rapidly. So we want to get some of that healing going before we try adding in a little bit of that. And when it comes to the fermented foods, when it comes to so many things, and partly because I've worked with people who are really chronically ill and highly sensitive, people want to go too fast. And that is the thing that I have learned again and again with clients, is to just slow down, go at your body's pace. You will get there. You don't want your life to be completely miserable during this time. If it's going to take you 3 years, then we need to make that 3 years livable and manageable for you. So often people want to start out with, a kraut juice or a beet kvass, and they're like drinking 8 ounces of it. And then they're running to the bathroom, or they're feeling terrible headache, or they got to go to sleep. Some of the things that happened to me when I first tried it. And we don't realize we need to go really slow. So in some cases, I have people start with 1 drop of something. Like, that's the level that I've worked with. And we work up by a drop every few days or once a week to get them acclimated if they're having a really strong, like, Herxheimer reaction with these fermented foods.
Beautiful. And what are some of you've mentioned adding fats and how well tolerated those are. What are some of the specific fat sources that you go to a lot, and some of the foods that you found to be most healing, especially at the extreme end of the spectrum?
Yeah. So That the other factor is that people will say, oh, I'm eating so much fat. And I'm like, tell me specifically how much you're eating. So with the GAPS diet, and when we're really working in this healing phase, we're looking at, 1 to 4 tablespoons total per meal. So often people are like, I had a teaspoon of something. That's so much fat, because we've been in this low fat paradigm. So we're really increasing that as long as people are able to, digest that, which may take time and work up slowly. There's a big emphasis on the animal fats, looking at grass-fed ghee is what we have at the start of the GAPS diet, because it's very easy to digest. You don't need your gallbladder for it. Coconut oil is the same way, so you don't have to have a healthy working gallbladder to digest either of those fats. But then anything that's naturally occurring, and of course I'm, advocating grass-fed animal meats and the fats that go along with that. Lard from pigs that have been out in the sun is a great source of vitamin D. Also, monosaturated fats. And so if you can get that locally, that's awesome. And then a lot of olive oil, some avocado oil. We want to make sure we have those oleic acids, and then getting in the fish and seafood. So just having a balance of naturally occurring old-timey fats that your grandparents would have known about. None of the, seed oils, and not anything that's processed, hydrogenated, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Before we circle back to some of the psychology and strategies you use to help get kids on board, and even for parents who are like used to eating like kids, tell me a little bit about these baths, the recipe that you guys use there, and some of your go-to detox juices that you guys have found helpful.
Yeah, so baths, we will, and again, this can be something that can actually cause a significant Herxheimer reaction in some people. So you want to look at how hot your water is, how much of a bath additive you're using, but often it can be really gentle.
And a Herxheimer reaction, for the listeners who aren't familiar.
So that's a detox reaction. So that's kind of the medicalized term for what we would say is a detox reaction, where it's kind of pulling something too fast and you're feeling it. And often it is an increase of a symptom you already have. So if you have mood issues, if you have skin issues, those things will often get worse as you're introducing these things that you're trying to remove from the body, or, you're having die off from adding fermented foods, same type of reaction.
Yeah, you're basically like detoxing faster than your body can get rid of it.
Can process it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and the skin is a way that we can take in some nutrients and let some things out. And so that's why we like to do the baths, because that can be very gentle. Sometimes we'll start with just foot baths if that's what people can tolerate. But we will do things like baking soda, which is very softening to the skin, particularly people that have eczema or skin issues. That can be very calming, changing the pH so that the bacteria isn't living on the outside. Natural mineralized sea salts, Epsom salt, magnesium flakes can be another one. Seaweed powder is really great. It's kind of like taking a bath in a tide pool, but you're getting tons of minerals.
I haven't put seaweed powder in my baths before.
It's kind of a fun one. You got to clean your bathtub afterwards, so it's a little extra effort.
Oh.
And then apple cider vinegar
of the seaweed powder.
I like seaweed powder from Mountain Rose Herbs, because you can buy it bulk there. And I find if you buy the ones that are meant to be for the bath, excuse me, they're often much more expensive because they're labeled as bath products versus something that's just bulk.
Same stuff, basically, though.
Yeah, same stuff. Just get it in the powdered form. And then we add a 1/4 cup of the seaweed powder. A 1/2 cup is typical for the other type of bath additives. Sometimes we'll go higher on that, but you really, again, you want to start out on the lower end, see how you tolerate it. When I first began doing Epsom salt baths, which can often be really strong for people, I would feel almost exhausted at the end of it. And my heart would be racing. I would feel a little bit lightheaded. And what I found is that if I would go outside and I would be barefoot in the grass and ground myself, and that would really help everything calm within my system. So that's another kind of tip for people to use if you're feeling that intense reaction, to actually just go outside and ground.
Nice. And that's probably even better when there's a little bit of snow on the ground or rain on the ground for those who are
like we have here in Portland, plenty of moisture.
There you go. That's where Portland's fantastic. Okay. So the recipe, ingredients, and then I'm going to have you kind of just recap the quantities. The seaweed, baking soda, apple cider vinegar, Epsom salt. Anything I'm missing?
There's a baking soda, magnesium flakes.
And that's in addition to the Epsom salt, magnesium
So
flakes?
these
Or is
are
it
one
sort of,
at a time.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
So we
right.
kind of rotate through different baths each day on the GAPS diet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So a quarter cup of seaweed. What's your go-to quantity of baking soda?
So for everything else, a half a cup.
Okay. Oh, that makes it easy. So half a cup of baking soda, half a cup apple cider vinegar, half a cup Epsom salt. And then do you increase those quantities as like the individual's tolerance increases?
I mean, sometimes, but it's also how much of that do you want to go through? You know, I sometimes will increase quantity, sometimes will increase temperature and kind of get a little bit of that sweating effect going as well. And so that's kind of my, I think, preferred method
All
to
right,
bring a little bit
guys.
more heat therapy in.
All right, beautiful. Those are some awesome detox hacks. Let's circle it back to getting everyone on board, because none of this even happens unless the parents buy into it, the kids buy into it. So how do you start for the parents who don't have a solid foundation, and on top of that, the kids who have health issues going on but very little interest in changing the way that they're eating?
I recommend that the parents actually start with themselves first with whatever dietary change that they want to make, because if you're going to feel a little bit of detox or die off, you want to get through that and feel a little crabby while your kids are still happy.
Oh,
You also want to get good at whatever cooking you need to do. So if you're new to making a meat stock, or if you're new to making a pot roast and that's going to be part of this new eating plan for you, get a little comfortable in the kitchen with that, because those are the real base foundations. You're going to be more forgiving than your kids are with recipes not turning out quite perfect. And so I like people to do a couple weeks prior to their kids, you know, and then it really depends on the age of your kids and what their motivation is, if they're old enough to have their own motivation. If you're working with a really young kid, you kind of just got to decide what you're going to do and then set your attitude to, like, we're doing this. I'm not going to get emotional about it. Like, these are just the new rules. I'm here to help everybody engage with this, but this isn't so personal. It's hard to do that, but you don't want to feed into your kids emotional, like, you guys don't want to go be emotional together if you're like, okay, that's it, no more sugar today, or, you know, we're trying this new thing and the kids are throwing a tantrum. You don't want to meet them at that place. You want to be
right.
like, cool, throw your fit, whatever, this food's still on the table, if you feel hungry, come get it.
And
So that
kids are like
attitude is a
little
lot.
receivers. They pick up on everything that we do. And if like we're coming from a
Yes.
place of like, oh, I don't really want to do this, but we're going to do it because Jen told me I have to. And the kids are going to pick up on that and be like, no, I don't want to do it either. It's imposed.
Yeah. And everybody in the household needs to be on board with this plan as well, especially if you're doing something that's dramatically different. Because often in my practice, it's mom who's really in charge of meals. Dad's like, yeah, fine, do this. We want it to be better, but they aren't really bought into it. And
Happy
the
wife,
kids will
happy life.
energetically know, like, he might take pity on me, you know. Early in my practice, like, we'd, you know, start implementing the GAPS diet on like a Monday, and then the kids would not be eating and mom would be upset and dad would call me on Thursday yelling at me angry.
Oh.
You know, my wife is crying, my kids are starving.
My pets' heads are falling off.
Explain the bigger picture to them. So I made a point of like, okay, everyone needs to be on board before we begin this now. And exactly to your point about energy, especially kids that are on the autism spectrum, they're highly, highly sensitive to energy and attention. And I see that so vividly in their connections to their parents that they really pick up on those stresses. So really getting yourself to a point where you feel confident, where you feel clear on what your goals are, is so important, because I want people to get prepared, start, stick with it. Don't stop. You restart again. The kids feel like, I won that round. Next time I just need to put up a little more fight and I could win again. So it's really important to start from the right place. With older kids, it can really be, what is their motivation? Are they having anxiety? Are they having, you know, stomach aches? Are they, you know, getting into their tween years and they're starting to have acne? What is their motivation that they would want to change. And often they won't, you're not going to say, oh yeah, let's change forever, but say, can we, give this a trial for a month? Let's see how it goes, and really find a way to work with them on that, where it's an experiment. They're building curiosity. They're understanding how the food is making them feel, and connect them with their own body and their own emotions again and again, so that they really internalize these changes. And that way, we can't force their change, how they eat all the time when they're not around us. Are they going to be binging on these other foods? If so, that's cool too. How does that make them feel? They come home bouncing off the walls like, oh, what is different about this? You had a really good time at this party until you had the cake. And then it was like, you kind of broke down and were really upset. Have those conversations with your own openness and curiosity, just to help them, feel this out and see how these things are really impacting them. Because that's the only thing that's really going to stick with them long-term and making better choices.
And so it sounds like identifying the pain that the child has and cares about, that the child wants to get rid of, and helping that your kid make the connection between the cause of this pain is it's likely some of these things that you're eating, and I want to help. We both want you to feel better, and in order to do that, let's do an experiment.
Yeah.
And so it's not permanent. It's not like, hey, you can't eat cake for the rest of your life. You want to do it long enough so that your child can make the connection that this food makes me feel like garbage.
Right.
Anything else in there that you found helpful, or any scripts that where parents are like, yeah, but you don't know my kid. My kids are a terror. They won't go for this. What else have you found helpful?
And so sometimes with teenagers especially, they can't hear it from you. So that can be a time where you'll do something like watching a film together, like on a Netflix, or a documentary about sugar or about a specific type of diet plan and health issues. Then that can be motivating, because they'll see it from someone else's perspective rather than you kind of forcing this onto them.
What's the best thing?
It kind of depends on the issue. There's one recently, I can't think of the name, about keto. There's ones about keto. There's ones about corn. I'm sorry, I can't think of them offhand right now. There's,
yeah. Okay.
And then there's different ones.
Knives and
yeah,
I haven't watched
that one is like more of a vegan style, which I don't really agree with there.
Yeah.
Then there's a couple that are about just sugar and how much sugar we have in our diet, and having kids understand that can be useful and kind of see for themselves rather than hear it straight from you. And then there are other kids that are really sciencey, and they want to kind of be their own detective. And so you can talk about something like artificial colors, and then if you're at the grocery store, they can be in charge of finding the product that doesn't have the artificial color that would be appropriate. And so they can take a little initiative there. And then I also think it's really, really important for many reasons to get our kids involved in preparing food and cooking, and teaching them. If you have any gardening or you pick, like getting kids involved in that process, they're much more likely to try something new if they've got some skin in the game. If they helped, shred something, peel something, whisk something, grow something, that builds a lot more curiosity and a lot more, pride of like, oh, I contributed to this, so now I'm willing to try something that maybe I wasn't at other meals.
I like that. And your approach is, there's a little bit of like jujitsu involved and teamwork and psychology. And I dig that. And at the same time, if you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, oh, this sounds like a lot of work. Like, yeah, it is. Anytime you want to make a change in your life for the better, it's work. You want to make more money, it's work. You want to get in shape, it's work. If you want to get rid of health issues that many people live with for their entire lives, and it dramatically compromises their ability to live the life that they were put here to live, it's work. And you got it. A lot of that work is front loaded, learning some new shit. So you need to be the fucking adult in this situation and like take care of your own psychology first and be good with it and understand it is what it is. There aren't shortcuts. There are biohacks that can make it easier, where if there's two ways to achieve something and one is less energy and effort and time, let's go with that. That's what we're here to reveal. But at the same time, if you're trying to do it without work, it's not going to happen. So that was just a little tough love moment, but
and I agree completely. That's what I say about commitment. It is work, just like all of the other most important things in our life. That's what I compare it to: getting your education, getting advanced in your career, your marriage, raising kids in general. Like all of those things you put forth this effort into, and it is hard, but it also gives us the greatest rewards. And that's what I feel like we need to approach our health with as well. And if you're just starting out on this journey, it seems overwhelming because you don't know how good it feels to feel better. And that's why you have to experiment with it, because when you realize that there is another level that you've never felt before, then you have the energy to do these different things. You have the motivation. You want to keep going. You don't want to slide back from that. That was what happened with me, that there was energy that came forth and a mental clarity that I had never experienced. So those are my bellwether things. When those things start slipping, I know that I'm slipping too much on my lifestyle and I want to get back to that level. So it's just, you got to experiment to get to that point in the first place.
I like that. Yeah. A lot of these breakthroughs do come from a willingness to experiment and say, all right, I may try 3 things and only keep one, but that one thing can completely transform your health.
Yes.
Nice. What troubleshooting things do you see come up a lot, where they're mentally committed, they've made the decision, their kids are on board, but
people not planning in advance for things to go awry. So find a restaurant that you can go to when the crap hits the fan and you need to go out, you need a night off of cooking. You can look up something that's paleo or organic or farm to table. There has to be something in your vicinity that you can have as a go-to when things are falling apart. That way you're not just like, I throw up my hands and now we're just going to have pizza and it's all over with. So make that plan in advance. Same thing with overcommitting themselves, because this has to be a priority, and there's never a perfect balance in life, but when you're really valuing something like this, you've got to put it first, and you've got to say, okay, there might be some other things that I just have to say no to at the moment with, extracurricular activities. And so setting those aside for a period of time until you have this new lifestyle down, because as you're learning these things, it can take some time and effort, but then it. For me, it's like all these things are just part of my routine. They barely take any, more time. It's just on repeat for me. And that's the point where you can expand socially a little bit more and still stay on track. So recognizing that this does take a little extra time and commitment up front. And then family members that are negative or friends that are really negative, they may need to be out of communication for a little bit at the beginning, because if you have people in your life who feel like it's torture to not give your kids sugar, or, feel like you're some sort of child abuser because you want your kids to eat vegetables every night, like they're, our family and our friends, they have their own baggage about food. And if they're trying to project that onto you and you're struggling in that moment, you're having a hard day, they're the ones that will encourage you to quit, when you really need to be speaking to people who are like, I get you. I understand what your vision is here. Keep going. Like, give it another day. You can get through this hard moment with your kid not wanting to eat this particular meal. Like, see it through. So being mindful of who you're associating with in those moments as well.
That's good advice, period. If someone's negative about your food, they probably don't limit it to that category of your life. And yeah.
And people take your food choices really personally, especially when it comes to family. You're not eating grandma's cookies anymore. You're not participating in our tradition. So you really have to understand what they're coming from. And often when we change our eating plan, people have to question their own eating, whether we are saying anything about them or not. They start feeling like we're judging them. So they're taking things much more personally than we intend them. So something to be mindful of.
Yeah, that's great. And a couple of your go-to products that you can get on Amazon, whether it's a certain type of bar or something like that, a mason jar of bone broth, things that can be brought with you when you're going to be busy? What are a few of your go-tos?
Yeah. So especially when I love to travel and I love to feel good still. So I will grab something like kettle and fire broth and just warm that up whatever way I can as I'm traveling. I love at home red boat fish sauce. You can pour that into anything and change the flavor of it, and it is amazing. Coconut aminos are another thing like that. And bars, I kind of don't have a super favorite. I tend to do meat sticks, just the different paleo varieties of meat sticks. Those are one of my go-tos. And then I'll do like sprouted nuts and seeds. Those are some of my kind of travel treats. Oh, and those little packages of olives. I can't think of the brands. I apologize.
Oh,
But they have those little packs of marinated olives that are really clean. Those are a great snack or travel thing as well. And then I always carry a little salt shaker, the real salt that they make, the baby shaker. I always have that with me so that I'm not getting processed salts if I need to add something when I'm eating out. And then I'll usually travel with a little bit of olive oil as well, so I don't have to worry about salad dressings at restaurants and getting a bunch of canola oil.
Those are great. Awesome tips. Anything else on the troubleshooting side, or are those the main things that come up?
The last thing I would say about that is just realizing that when you make a change like this, there will be something unpleasant or negative that comes about at first as your body is readjusting or as your kids are readjusting. So it's never like, oh, I decided this and now everything's going up. Like healing, changing is like this process. The general trajectory is this direction, but there's going to be some ups and downs. So just recognize that up front, that it's not all going to be perfect, but you just keep going. You just keep taking that next step. And it doesn't have to be perfect every single day for you to get much greater health than you have right now.
I love it. Are you up for a short rapid fire round?
Okay.
All right, cool. So these are going to be some 1-2 word answers. In some cases, like a sentence is required, but we'll rattle through some fun things and whatever is the first thing that comes to mind. Cool?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. What was the last book you read and loved?
Oh, I read so many books. Well, the last book I read was a fiction book called The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Nice.
Very long book, very odd story, very just beautiful journey to go on.
Love it. Your definition of healthy?
My definition of healthy is a lot about prioritizing mindset, taking the time for yourself every day to think through your choices and to not over-focus on it, to let something slide, but more of that 80-20 life choices.
Nice. What's one product that you can't live without?
My gosh, I feel like there's so many. What am I super into right now? There's so many things. I'm really into essential oils, so like those are most of what comes to mind for me.
Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, the one that I really love so much is frankincense, because that's one that I put on my skin after the shower, and it just seems to help me with having a nice skin tone. So that's a favorite.
doTERRA, Young Living.
I do Young Living. Yeah, Young Living.
All right, nice. And that frankincense is also, there's a good amount of research behind it in terms of its ability as an anti-cancer compound, not as a cancer cure or anything like that, but as a preventative measure and a part of a regimen, if that's something you're dealing with. What do you do to unwind and relax?
I start out my morning with relaxation. That helps the rest of my day go well. So my morning routine is to do 15 to 30 minutes of yoga and then do 20 minutes of meditation in the sauna.
Oh, nice.
And I'll usually do some meditation and some gratitude. And that really sets the tone for my day. So that's something that I've prioritized, because I was a person who in the past would have said, I have a lot of anxiety, I wake up worried every day. That has completely flipped the script for me. And then when it comes to like unwinding at the end of the day, I love to watch Hallmark Christmas movies. They're really
Hallmark
cheesy.
Christmas movies?
Yes. They're really formulaic,
Okay.
but they're very relaxing to me. And I like to do a lot of silly things like, going to events that are costume parties or going to these shows like that. Something that gets me a little bit out of my element, gets me out of my head. That's most relaxing to me. It's kind of like to forget about Jen for a while and just be in the moment.
Yeah, I dig it. What's your favorite supplement?
My favorite supplement is grass-fed liver.
What brand?
We've been doing the Ancient Nutrition. I'm terrible at brand names today.
Is that Axe's? Dr. Josh Axe's company?
No, it's not that one. And so I might be saying the wrong name.
Oh yeah, it's Ancient something. I think I know what you're talking about.
And it's like a New Zealand source.
Yeah, and they've got ones that are like, they've got a number of different organs in there mixed in.
Yeah, they do all different organ meats and stuff.
We'll put it in the show notes. I know what you're talking about.
Liver is my jam. And I don't eat enough of it, so supplements really help me feel well.
Is fasting a wise part of this GAPS protocol when people are compromised at the beginning?
It depends on if their blood sugar is stable enough to do so. Often when people begin the GAPS diet, their blood sugar is too dysregulated for something like that. But overall, I think it can be useful to just do like a 1 day, nothing really extended, but to give digestion a complete break. And I am a huge fan of at least having 12 hours in between dinner and breakfast and having a real overnight fast, because it's very helpful to let the small intestine run the dishwasher, so to speak, and sweep out anything that shouldn't be there. It's very helpful for digestion, particularly with SIBO.
Yeah, that seems to be like the minimum for a lot of different health-related challenges, is like just have 12 hours between dinner and your first meal the next day. What have you eaten today?
Today I had scrambled eggs, red cabbage sauerkraut, and a little bit of yogurt with cinnamon. That's what my acupuncturist recommended. I eat a bunch of cinnamon, and so I needed to have a carrier for that this morning.
Very cool. Last question. I've thought of it a few times throughout our conversation. Raw milk, yes or no?
Yes.
Nice. Well, Jen, this has been a lot of fun. And you shared some amazing biohacks for people that are dealing with digestive issues and just maybe struggling to get themselves or their kids on board. For people that have enjoyed this, where can they stay up to date with what you're working on, projects, things like that?
So the best place to find me is my website, which is bodywisdomnutrition.com. I have a newsletter there. I blog there. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, but to get the kind of insider stuff, I really send to my newsletter.
Beautiful. Well, this has been amazing. You were great. I've enjoyed hanging out with you, and thank you.
Thank you. Fun to be here.